Beyond, and hello and welcome to Podcast Beyond episode 634. Good heavens, that's so many episodes. My name is Max Scoville, filling in for Jonathan Dornbush, who could not be here today, and I'm joined by Brian Altano and Lucy O'Brien.
Hello!
Yay!
Woo!
Here we are, Beyond. Huzzah!
Woo!
Wonderful time to be alive.
It's great.
Everything's great. Anyway, so let's talk about some stuff that's going on here. Jonathan started to prepare a show, and I didn't do a very good. I'm doing the flustered substitute teacher thing here. I
Just put on a video. Let's watch Jumanji.
We are going to have
It'll be like primary school. In Wellington, New Zealand.
Twister has science in it, right, gang?
No shit. That's what they used to do. They just used to plonk us in front of a VHS tape.
Yeah,
we had
we had the two. That's why I made that reference.
Yeah, our science teachers drank sometimes too. They would come in on a Thursday and be like, "Yeah, today we're watching The Mask of Zorro." Anyway, So just full disclosure, if we seem flustered, it's because we got an email immediately before we started recording about the spread of a virus called COVID-19 and how, different offices are handling things differently, and that everyone should wash their hands and cover their mouths when they cough, but not cough into their hands. And it's just a little weird to go from that into talking about like what Crash Bandicoot had for lunch or whatever. How are you guys?
Good. I don't really care what he ate as long as he washed his hands before and after.
I've become a little bit obsessive compulsive with washing my hands now. It's becoming like a nervous tick thing. I've got like one thing of hand sanitizer and I'm like, it's like a obsessive compulsive.
Yeah, no, I'm not typically like a fussy germaphobe person, but it's a creepy time out there.
I've been washing one hand and then not washing the other, and I'm gonna see which one wins.
Dance with the devil. It was weird walking to work today because the streets of San Francisco are so empty. Just very empty.
So on sort of a positive pivot there, speaking of like weird streets with not enough stuff in them and the spreads of various plagues and whatnot, we shot our first episode or episodes of Jonathan's big, huge Bloodborne Let's Play. All four of us sat down together and had a really good time.
It was very fun.
I don't know when exactly we're going to be putting that up, but I'm very excited to...
We talk about this game constantly on the show, and warning, we probably will again, but I think that after playing so much of it, I kind of forgot how much fun it is in group settings to also watch other people be really good at it or not good at it and then get better at it or get good at it, as they say. I think that's a sort of element of it that I kind of forgot about entirely, because it's been such a sort of selfish, shut off the lights, sit at home, play by myself kind of game for me, aside from the like watching a few Let's Plays here and there. But like sitting in a room with a bunch of friends and having a few beers and eating some pizza and watching Jonathan get good at this game has been awesome, and I think you guys are going to really, really like it. Thank you so much to everyone who pestered us to make this show for so long, because we're finally doing it, and it's all thanks to you.
You inadvertently signed a petition that we took to the mayor of IGN, and we said, let us make this show, and they said, okay, fine.
So honestly, if there's anything you want more from us in the future, just ask a lot, and we will make it happen.
Yeah. Also, like the weird thing is we all like sit around talking about games together, but for the most part, I feel like we don't really see each other playing games a lot. Like we don't sit around at a desk playing games with a few exceptions. And like there's a handful of people who are like hardcore good at stuff, and some people I maybe aren't great at all or don't play at all, or who knows, but I won't throw them under the bus. It's me. I'm bad at them. I'm bad at the games. But I don't know. Is Jonathan good at games or is he bad at games? You'll have to stick around to find out. Anyway, let's get to the news. Big, huge news here. I don't even know if we're allowed to talk about this game anymore. It used to be a PlayStation exclusive, Horizon Zero Dawn. Luckily, we got our big discussion about that out of the way because it is coming to PC. How do you guys feel about this?
I mean, I could provide a joke answer, but the real answer is that I feel this is great. This is great. I mean, Horizon's a couple of years old now. Most people who are PlayStation obsessive have already played the hell out of it. I love that PC players are able to play it. I think it's going to look gorgeous on a PC. And yeah, I think that like it's a very cool thing to see Sony do this. I mean, I don't think it's going to become the norm. Herman Holst in his interview on the Sony blog said that it wasn't going to be like, this isn't the beginning of a new era of every exclusive also coming to PC. I mean, Sony doesn't really have the infrastructure for that like Microsoft does.
Right.
I think that, they still very much want PlayStation exclusives to be PlayStation exclusives. And I think that those who are PC only may actually like really discover that PlayStation exclusives can be awesome and maybe flock towards that system or the PS5 when it comes out. So I think it's a good thing. It's very positive.
I'm totally with you. My philosophy on this from day one is that this will sell more PlayStations. This will get people embedded into these stories, and they will go, oh, Horizon 2 is coming out. I'm not going to wait 3 years for it. And they'll jump on it. That said, the turnaround time for Death Stranding coming to PC is a lot shorter than the Horizon PS4 to PC convergence there. So you're looking at that's probably 7-8 months from Death Stranding launching on consoles to it coming to PC this summer.
Yeah, that's about right.
So that's the kind of thing where if you were on the fence of buying a PS4 for what one of these would be exclusive system sellers, with a turnaround time like that, maybe you'd hold back a little bit. So I don't necessarily see that being the most beneficial for their hardware division. But if you have to wait 3 years to play Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or whatever, you're probably going to want to buy a PS5. And so that's what it's ultimately funneling back into that. Whereas Microsoft's philosophy is just like, wherever you play our games, if you see our logo, that counts. It's points on the board.
Yeah, so, they don't care where you play it.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting that the two sort of, I mean, we knew that Death Stranding would be coming to PC eventually, but the fact that and Horizon Zero Dawn are both running on the Decima engine, which, Guerrilla Games built, which I feel like this might wind up being like Sony's big sort of flagship engine moving forward. And
totally.
That maybe putting it on PC is, I don't know. I have this hunch, and it's totally just a hunch. I'm basing this off of nothing, but that they might open it up to license out to people and be like, hey, do you want to make an open world game? Boom, here you go. Because I feel like you can get like a what is it, Crytek engine or Unity or Unreal
Engine,
yeah. Those all are sort of open to the public to start making games in and fiddling around with. But are any of those super well suited to open world games? I don't know how games work exactly.
I mean, a lot of
under the hood.
A lot of open world games are built in UE4, which it happens fairly often. It's like this though, like Decima is stunning. Yeah, like it's on a whole nother level. So I find that really interesting. I think that communication will only help. I'm totally with you on that. I think that the reason that there was some backlash over this is childishness, because people tether to a plastic box and fight for it to the death, and exclusives are the ammunition in the console war. But it's also because we haven't had any tangible good PlayStation 5 news yet. Period.
Yeah, and I think that is the reaction I understand a little bit more. It's like, especially for those who are very, very, brand loyal and are dying for something from Sony. It does kind of feel like, okay, so it's one of your PlayStation exclusive games is heading to PC. Like, that's great, but can you please give us something else to be excited for as a PlayStation owner?
Yes. Yeah. That audience, this audience, us, you listening, we need Sony to throw us a bone at this point. Yeah. Like we're at like peak speculation territory. There's now articles coming out all over the industry from people saying, Microsoft is dominating the next gen console talk, which is not hard to do when you're the only one talking. And so I think we're all just sort of like, give us something good, not just like this thing that we liked 3 years ago is going somewhere else.
We did get something good. We got some great news to sort of change subjects here. Ghost of Tsushima has a release date, which is June 26th.
Yep.
I just suddenly got much more excited for this game because it seems achievable.
It seems around the corner. Yeah.
And it's I don't know. I've lost track of which games are actually coming out when they were supposed to and which have been kicked ahead a few months.
Totally. And this was a tentative summer, air quotes title for a while, which means nothing in the video game industry. Sometimes that means like the middle of September, sometimes it just doesn't happen at all. So this to me means that we'll be playing this summer, and if it gets delayed, then we'll be playing it this fall.
Yeah. And
it's almost here.
Yeah. And I think, we've sort of got Sony's lineup now, and it's, for the PlayStation 4, the swan song year. And I think what we're going to see is all of those games are going to come in the first half of this year.
Yeah.
And then the second half of this year, I think that's when they're going to properly double down on PS5 and that's when we're actually going to start hearing news. I mean, I can't really fathom any other reason for their silence beyond not wanting to kind of dominate the conversation when they're so heavily focused on their exclusives in the first half of the year.
I'm totally with you. Yeah, we theorized in the show about how weird it almost was that sort of like baton handoff between PS4 to PS5 was so neck and neck and stacked with PS4 games that like the idea of like coming up for air in the fall playing Ghost of Tsushima and being like, oh, do I need to buy a new system? Why?
Yeah.
Like this is going great for me. Like you kind of need to give people stuff early on this year or through the middle of the year and then take it away.
Yeah. No.
There's
totally.
a huge backlog of stuff to play there, but then you have to start getting people excited for the next gen system at some point.
I'm very curious to see if whatever Microsoft announces around E3 time, and I'm going to say around E3 time because I'm very undecided as to whether E3 is even going to happen this year, considering everything that's going on in outside of these four walls.
The ESA has been saying it's all trucking forward or whatever, full speed ahead, and Gamescom announced the same thing today. So,
but obviously Microsoft just announced a sort of a couple of talks that they're going to be showing next week that they were going to show at GDC. So I imagine if E3 doesn't happen, then Microsoft will. Well, I don't imagine. I know that I have complete faith that this is what will happen. Is that we will still see Microsoft's presentation in some form or the other around E3 time. So that's going to happen, whatever. And I am very curious to see if that may speed up any messaging from Sony, or considering the Ghost of Tsushima does hit at the end of June, whether they will sort of start everything properly in July.
That's exciting to think about. Right now, though, like the sort of lineup of PS4 exclusives it's nothing to scoff at. It's MLB The Show, Nioh 2, Predator Hunting Grounds, Persona 5 Royal, FF7 Remake, Last of Us 2, and Ghost of Tsushima. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's not even including Dreams that just came out like 2 weeks ago.
And Dreams is the gift that keeps on giving as well. I mean, this is a massive year for PlayStation. I'm not surprised that they want to focus on their exclusives, because look at that lineup.
Yeah, I wonder if this was... I mean, I know it wasn't, but it's interesting that this is now the game plan, because I think that for a long time they were probably like... A lot of these games were sort of tentative for last year or earlier in this year, and I don't think they really expected, when they laid all the cards out of the table years ago, to be like, this is our year for PS5, for all this stuff to be bumping up against each other so closely. It's a really good problem to have for people who love video games. It's a really good problem to have for people who aren't really interested in dropping $500-$600 on a new console this fall. Because
I mean, we've said that a bunch of times, but being an early adopter kind of sucks.
Yeah,
you pay more for something that maybe isn't great at launch and maybe has like a so-so library at first, and then there's always weird bugs and things that need fixing. But if you wait till the tail end of it, it's like everything's cheaper and there's a lot more of it, and it's great. Like I can't imagine how awesome it must be to buy a PS4 this fall.
Or get Horizon on PC. It's like the complete edition. It's got all the DLC and everything like that. Everything's, all the kinks have been worked out and all that stuff. So plus mods, you put Waluigi and his big ass in there, or whatever you want to do. Thomas the Tank Engine, butt naked.
How do you guys feel?
Balls.
Stop.
Just shooting wheels of cheese everywhere.
Just stop.
Soaking wet.
That's gonna be fun. I really do.
I'm visualizing this.
Right? Instead of one of the robot dinosaurs, it's just butt naked.
Yes. Yeah, balls.
PC gaming, you guys are having a good time over there.
We
check in on those boys.
It was like the scariest.
They're not doing too hot.
Like the scariest RE2 mods, and it was like one of them they make, Mr. X just real small.
That's so funny.
And he like comes and he kicks the door down, and he's just like,
and he's like,
and he still does the same damage. So he comes up and he takes a swing, and then you're just like,
he punches you and you go flying.
Yeah, speaking of Thomas the Tank Engine, that was another Resi 2 mod.
Yeah,
and
it's a great
one. Genuinely very sinister.
Yeah,
just a big old Thomas the Tank Engine. Punching you in the face.
It's a scary train.
Dudes out here where they put Waluigi in Breath of the Wild, like the first day they got it running, they're like, we had the power, here we go, is what we're going to do with this new science. We're going to put Waluigi in the game. He's going to do magic.
I want to see what happens to those poor dinosaurs, what they do with them. It's going to be great. It's
right?
A good time. So in other sort of exclusive Sony news, it was announced that there is going to be a Last of Us TV show from the sort of writer-creator of Chernobyl. And it's going to be working with, like, Neil Druckmann's going to work alongside with him. It seems like really just sort of everyone kind of came together on this. what is his name?
I want to hear the story behind this because Shannon Woodward, who plays Dina in Last of Us Part 2, apparently introduced Neil Druckmann to
Craig Mazin.
Yeah. Oh, because she's on Westworld on HBO.
She is. Yeah. And she introduced them, and I'd love to kind of hear about those early chats because this guy Craig Mazin is that how you say his name?
I don't know.
Hopefully,
really liked it.
Mazin.
Also, if you haven't seen Chernobyl, go watch it because it's like
it's very good,
amazing,
very good.
I'm like a huge horror fan, and that was probably my favorite piece of media around horror last year, which was terrifying because there's no monster; it's just invisible poison.
The air.
Yeah, it's super creepy and real.
Yeah, but it turns out Craig is also a big fan of Last of Us, and it was this weird kind of one of those like, oh, it's like a nice Twitter romance where like him and Neil Druckmann sort of start tweeting at each other back and forth, and then gradually, I guess they just sort of actually talking about doing this.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about this specifically is that this effectively cancels out the long in production hell movie that they were working on that Neil Druckmann openly tweeted like about a year ago when they said like, we have a script. He was like, I haven't seen it.
Right.
So good luck out there. It was one of those like, it was that movie was sort of neck and neck with Uncharted for a while in terms of like, who is making this? Is this actually happening? This is getting kicked to 15 different writers and directors every 6 weeks. It was in development hell constantly. And so I'm
so pleased they're not making it, that this is the route they've gone down.
Me too.
Especially in terms of, everyone's a little bit... I understand the concern over turning something like The Last of Us into a different format because it works so well as a piece of interactive media, particularly when it comes to that sort of end twist where you realize that the character you are controlling...
Spoilers.
Sorry, massive spoilers. The character you are controlling isn't necessarily the guy you thought he was, and that is that was a very powerful moment in the game for me. And you're not necessarily going to be able to replicate that in a show or a film, but I do think that there are so many other avenues that a show in particular could take that world into.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more room for world building there. My concerns are that this, and like you just alluded to, I think if you're a huge fan of the game, you have that story already. That story was told to you in the medium that you first received it in, and having that reinterpreted through cinema is a kind of
cinema. You can't say cinema. You have to say cinema. Do you like cinema?
I only watch cinema. It could be kind of like weird and off-putting because it's sort of that
it's reverse Uncanny Valley.
Yeah, exactly.
It is,
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
About to say that. Yeah, because all of a sudden you're looking at something and you're like, that's not the character that I imagine. This is a way you have to do this voice. This is a way you have to do this character. Like people have already been asking for the Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker to play these characters, and like that doesn't work because they don't.
Does not. So profoundly does not work.
Yeah. They don't.
Because Ashley Johnson is not a kid.
No. Exactly.
Yeah, Troy Baker's he's not a crusty old man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm still really excited. I do think that as a story, The Last of Us is one of the very few stories that can actually shoulder an HBO adaptation. I think that it is one of the most, we all know, blah, 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 mature storytelling in the interactive medium. Cinema. But it is
Thinner.
Stop it.
Let's just do voices for the rest of the show.
Cinema.
We're getting too silly.
Have you seen the Three Colors trilogy? Anyway, no.
I only watch 3 ninjas kick back in the cinema.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, no. Anyway, it's very mature storytelling. So I think it's great. And I was sort of wondering whether that or not they would actually focus on different characters.
Me too. That was my original hope.
Yeah.
That's
and we do know there's a quote here. This is from Hollywood Reporter. It said the HBO series will cover the events of the original game, which was written by Druckmann, with the possibility of additional content based on the forthcoming game sequel, The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah,
and it sounds like it'll be Joel and Ellie's story with some DLC.
It is. We're not just hypothesizing here. It is going to be Joel and Ellie.
It is, and reiterated by Craig. I'm just going to cough instead of saying his last name. when he said that Ellie was going to be gay in the adaptation. So we know that Ellie is actually going to be the focus. I think this also, just one last thing on this. I do really think it's going to be made or broken by its core duo, whoever they cast. I think so far a lot of the speculation has been really wildly off because people kind of forget that we are focusing on... How old was Ellie in the first game? She was... I think she was 13. I'm probably wrong and I apologize in advance.
Like you're at an auction.
I'm just trying to think back because she's 19 in the sequel and that is 5 years later, if I'm right.
Impossible to do that math. We'll have to phone a friend.
No, but I'm not sure whether it's 5 years. I'm not sure. Oh, God. I've dug myself a hole. I'm just seeing the YouTube comments pouring down. But she's young. What I'm trying to say is she's a kid. You know, she's only just like entering kind of teenagehood. She's very, very young. And I personally would love to see an unknown in that role. A
lot of people love to do the casting where it's like, who does the character look like? And it's like, well, that doesn't really... The whole point of acting is to behave like someone else, regardless of how you might look. And you know, obviously we saw this recently with like the Witcher casting where people are like, that's not my Yennefer, and then the show came out and for the most part people were like, this is actually pretty good, they nailed it, they did a good job. And also it's based on the books. My Yennefer. But I don't know, like there is of course that thing where you look at it, whatever the show is, there will inevitably be people who are like, well, I don't know how I feel about it, it's not what I wanted.
Sorry to interrupt. She was 14, and The Last of Us Part 2 is 5 years later. So, just wanted to.
No, they'll find something else to get mad at you for this episode. I promise.
Okay. I mean, I know, but yes. Continue.
I think you said cinema too many times. The show got off the rails. Bring back Jonathan Dornbush.
I think this is going to be fantastic for audiences who have no connection with the story at all. I imagine somebody coming in and sitting down on a Sunday night to watch like prestige television on HBO and getting served like this as a 6 to 8 episode sort of like season.
Definitely.
And not 10 episodes like The Outsider, which what happened, guys? Like do you guys come on. Like that should have been
6 tops.
Yeah, right? They really dragged ass on that one. And so I think that's going to be awesome for them. I think people who played the video game there's going to be a little bit of getting used to there, but I think it'll be okay.
Also, right. I mean, the thing that makes the video game so good is the human moments. Like the gameplay is also great, you know, but at the same time, it's like it's those characters are so special because of how much time was spent making them characters.
Oh yeah, totally. Like no one's when people are talking about The Last of Us, no one's like, oh my God, remember that when you just killed all those guys with a gun?
There's
remember that awesome gameplay?
There's going to be stabbing and there's going to be shooting and there's going to be all sorts of but it's not.
I mean, I do just to reiterate. I love the gameplay in The Last of Us. I think it's great. I love that it's very survival horror, but I think the reason that it is so lauded is because of the story.
It's a good story,
right? No, I think that
it's going to be weird if there's like a half an episode where it's just going through kitchen drawers being like, oh, I need ammonia and batteries and toothbrush screws, gasoline, whatever.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
Throw a little MacGyver in there. If they're able to maintain the tension that that game has when you're hiding behind something and something's stalking you or you're sneaking up on something, I think it'll work really well. The thing I'm interested in is, the HBO's biggest show ever was Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. We all know how that ended, but I'm not going to talk about that. That show did a really interesting thing of deviating from the source material a lot, which split the audience in a lot of ways because you had a lot of the book purists being like, oh, that's not the way it's supposed to go. And a lot of other people being like, oh, I have no point of reference for that. This is really interesting to me. But I think it kept all sides on their toes. I wonder if this show is going to be interested in doing that at all, like deviating from the source material a little bit.
I think you will almost have to just do some stuff to shake things up and for people who are fans of the game and know it backwards and forwards, like to have something in there that gut punches them the same way that the actual game did when they first played it. Like they want that. And obviously people who are newcomers are going to be like, have something that has like a similar impact, but is a different. You can still tell that story, but without the exact same beats.
Yeah, like if you look at the way Walking Dead did it, where they're like, okay, we have all this source material. This is what's going to happen to this character. There was a lot of stuff that they like funneled in where they were like, this is how this character dies. And it's this gory, brutal, iconic panel in the comic. And in the show, they eventually got there, but they also like let them live for 5 more seasons than they would have in the book or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Like you look at something like Breaking Bad, where like Jesse was supposed to be killed off in like the 4th episode. And they're like, we really like him. And they just kept him through the whole thing. Like that could happen here where they adapt a character who dies in the game and he connects really well with audiences and people are like, don't kill that guy. He's my favorite. And then on the show, he just lives for 3 more seasons.
Yeah.
Who knows? So I think that's what I'm interested in. Less so like a one-to-one adaptation of something that I've already experienced.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I also really hope that they lean very heavily into the horror aspects because people sort of forget that game is actually very, very frightening.
Did you watch Chernobyl?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the thing I really want to see more of that was sort of hard to gamify was the cordyceps, like the actual sense of like infection and like things being fungal and weird out in that wilderness, and being like, I mean, obviously it was kind of at its core, it's a zombie story, but like, I mean, the way they first teased it was like, oh, here's like an ant that has like a, you know, like a fungus like infecting it, and like things like creepy crawly things, like stuff that makes you like, you know, want to go wash your hands.
If
like,
Chernobyl's any indication, I think you'll see people interfacing with sort of airborne spores and stuff like that, and stuff that just really gives you the creeps.
Well,
like,
there's a lot of body horror in Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Like,
And in The Last
there's
of
that
Us.
one episode that it was burned on my brain. I'm sure we all know what we're talking about,
Yep.
what I'm talking about.
yeah, please go watch that show. It's on HBO.
Yes. Anyway, moving on, a couple of quick hits here. Doom Eternal is coming out very shortly. Lots of people are excited to rip and or tear through hell, kick Satan in the ass like you do in that game. And they just revealed a trailer today which shows that there's going to be heavy amounts of customization for the Doomslayer, including completely bonkers, nonsense, ridiculous stuff such as a beautiful pink and purple unicorn costume to wear presumably in multiplayer, but maybe in general.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome.
My first reaction was like, oh, it's a first-person game. It doesn't matter. But then the second he put his giant arm and his gun out and it was like bright, white and purple, I was like, oh yeah, no, this kicks ass.
Yeah, like,
it's also like this further connects it with Animal Crossing launching the same day.
I think
Fabulous outfits for you and your friends to try on.
like Doomguy is always like Doom as a, you know, especially in the 2016 sort of reboot. Like,
Also, sorry, Doom Slayer. I will not say it, but that's what it's called. He's Doom Guy.
yeah.
Thank you.
You know, it's always kind of lent into the ridiculous and the kind of even a little bit of the cute. You know what I mean? And I love that this is an option for people. And obviously, if you don't want to customize your Doom Guy, you don't have to.
No, I love this stuff. It shows that they're not afraid to get self-referential and humorous with their own ridiculously over-the-top source material.
Did you guys watch that that amazing little featurette on the music in Doom Eternal?
No.
It's very cool. Watch it if you haven't already. It's basically like a making of, and what the kind of sound producer did is that's not the name, that's not the title of his job, but like the guy looking or overseeing the sound, he got all these Mr. Music we call him. He dances a merry jig. He got all of these middle frontmen and women into a room and formed this chorus. And it's just like, it's a 50-50 gender split. So it's pretty amazing. Like, it sounds amazing. And all of these like hardcore metal singers are basically doing the music for Doom Eternal.
Doom is so great. I love that Doom is a thing that we're dealing with.
It's like a middle core, like a middle choir.
I want that to be like a Siri or Alexa voice where you just get those people to record a whole bunch of various things.
No, that's
so they can start screaming at you to let you know when your Amazon package shows up.
Yeah.
I love weird video game music that gets experimental and people start playing around with it. I did like a dive in. I think there's a Wired article about this, about the music in Death Stranding, which I, for the most part, was kind of, I thought it was like, it was cool, it was all right, but it didn't blow my mind. Apparently they did all sorts of nonsense, like where they were going to Home Depot and buying like old spools and like banging stuff together, but then also using like procedural generation to like have different sort of like waveforms come. I don't like, so basically like, you know, the environment would effectively play its own music for you.
Right.
And it's the kind of thing where I'm like, I don't know enough about how game design and music come together, but it's like, it was so cool to be, I love the practical aspect of it.
Yeah,
Anytime you get like, you know, 70 metal singers in a room, or you go to Home Depot and you buy old tubes and wires and stuff.
I've read a lot of interviews with video game musicians, Mr. Music specifically. No, and
I'm gonna look him up now because I'm doing him a disservice.
That's definitely like a small town wedding DJ.
Don't look up Mr. Music.
Why?
Okay, fine. Look
Doom
up
Eternal,
Mr. Music. I don't care.
What could possibly? It's her phone. I don't care.
You have the Mr. Music virus now.
Anyway, long story short,
diagnosed with Crazy Frog.
One of the most interesting things about it is that like when you're listening to music, it just happens, right? And it crescendos and ebbs and flows and stuff like that. But when that happens in a video game where you just stop walking or running, it has to account for that. Because like when music swells and builds up, and it's like dun 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 dun, dun, and your guy's just like. It like you look like an idiot. So they have to figure out a way to sort of like bring things down a little bit, and you start running it and it brings things back up. So it's very different than just like dropping a 3-minute track and looping it or something like that. It has to kind of work dynamically with what the player is or isn't at all doing.
Yeah. His name is, Mr. Music's real name is Mick Gordon, and he's an Aussie.
Oh.
And he's the composer.
For what?
Doom Eternal.
Oh, I thought you were looking up if there was a real Mr. Music.
Mr. Music is Mick Gordon.
That's not. No one calls him that.
No one. I'm trying to figure out if there's a Mr. Music out there. You're doing real research.
I want to apologize.
Wasting my time, Lucy. Come on.
The people in the comments who were just furiously, angrily typing Mick Gordon into the comments because a lot of people really like his music and games.
He's great. He's great.
That's what I'm asking. I want to know if there's a real Mr. Music. He's married.
Mick Gordon the real Mr. Music?
Is there a Mrs. Music or a Lil Music?
Okay. Anyway, this is something that probably I only am the only one who cares about, but we got a teaser for a new Worms game. Do you guys remember Worms?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to come to PS4 or anything. It's like an old PC game where you make the worms throw grenades and stuff at each other.
That'll probably come to PS4.
I had a grand time with that old game back in the day. That was a good local multiplayer experience. You could throw bananas, sheep, all sorts of nonsense.
What else was going on for you that summer?
It wasn't great. It wasn't great. A lot of things could have been better. Anyway.
How many Slurpee cups did you collect?
Can you do your little Max voice when you're playing Worms?
I love worms. Hope my dog doesn't get him someday.
I didn't have a dog or friends. I would like trick people to come over to my house and I'd be like, do you guys want to play Worms World Party? They're like, do you have Worms Armageddon? I'm like, no. Then I'd be stuck with Worms World Party. Anyway, speaking of games that people do care, stop that. We have Nioh 2 as
luckily he's the one person that counts.
So I don't want to do this is a terrible time. Anyway, Mitchell Saltzman just amazingly enough reviewed Nioh 2, an exclusive PlayStation 4 game where you do all sorts of sword stuff and jumping. It's hard as hell. And Mitchell's going to join us in just a moment. We got to take a quick break and wheel out the TV like the substitute teacher used to do when they were hungover, or the real teacher was. Anyway, we're watching Jumanji after this. Stick around.
You guys like worms?
Stop it. And we're back, and we are joined now by Mitchell Saltzman, who just completed his review for Nioh 2, which went live on IGN as of recording this literally 3 minutes ago. Mitchell, what'd you make of Nioh 2?
I liked it a lot. I gave it a 9. I think it is better than the first one in the ways that it evolves a lot of the aspects of Nioh that were already really good. Like the combat is amazing. They added this Castlevania-esque aspect of it where every enemy you kill has a chance of dropping their soul core. So if you played Aria of Sorrow or Dawn of Sorrow, you know what that's all like. So you can pick up their own moves and then basically equip them to your own loadout, so to speak. And it's just really fun to be able to experiment with that level of depth in the combat.
Mitchell, I spent like 100 hours grinding for those things in those Castlevania games. So that sounds really, really good.
Yeah.
So did you do awesome. A thing where you're running in and out of the door like 100 times to kill the same thing to make them drop one card?
No, they don't. I don't. Well, actually, you might be able to do that. I feel like the drop rates are a lot higher than they were in the Castlevania games. So I don't envision people having to do that all that much.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
So to back things up, this is the Team Ninja sort of Soulsborne like esque, whatever we're calling it. The first game had you playing as sort of a dude named William, who was kind of like a samurai type character, and then this time around you get to create your own character, and it's kind of the same universe.
Yeah, William. God, I forgot his last name, but he was based on a real life Western samurai, so to speak. Who
his name was Tom Cruise.
Somehow that translated to him being a Geralt of Rivia cosplayer in the original Nioh.
Because he wasn't really much of a, because in Nioh 2 you can it's custom character, right? So and I read your review and you said that didn't really it wasn't a massive leap from the first game because William in the first game was kind of like a mute character anyway.
Right.
Yeah, and I even interviewed the director of Nioh 2 and I asked him how that was different in having this mute character versus William. And he basically said it's not that much different because William didn't really talk in the first one that much.
What was your character like? Like, what did you play as?
I created a female. She had a really cool eye patch that ultimately when I ended up having like a full ninja setup, it was really cool because it was like, all this was covered. So I don't know. It reminded me kind of like Kakashi from Naruto.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, the game has you've got sort of different weapons that are kind of affect how your build kind of comes together. What were your sort of likes and dislikes? How do you think it all kind of compared to the first time around?
Very similarly to the first one. There's two new weapon types. You have the Switchglaive, which is the one that I use primarily in my playthrough. And then you have, I believe, the dual hatchets, which I didn't really get to mess around all that much with. But the unfortunate thing is that each weapon is so different from all the others, and they all scale differently with different stats. That unless you reset your character, you don't really get a chance to experiment with all the different weapons. So most of my experience was playing with the Switchglaive, which was amazing.
Tell me why, because I gotta say, it's, both Brian and I have kind of been mucking around with Nioh 2. I didn't play the first one really at all. I played maybe 20 minutes of the first one, so yeah, no, I didn't play it. But like, one of the things that really struck me was that there was just such an enormous amount of customization and in terms of like your weapon selections and obviously when you transform and what you choose in that regard, what build you choose in that regard. How did you kind of go about selecting what you eventually selected?
So the Switchglaive I picked because it was a new weapon that I wasn't familiar with from the first game. And also it scales with magic, which is another aspect of the first game that I didn't really get to experience. So I wanted specifically to see how Omnio magic worked in Nioh 2. And it turns out it's really helpful. I don't know how I would have gone through some of these tougher boss battles without some of the debuffs and buffs that you get from the magic tree.
That's really awesome. I think I'm gonna try to build my character out like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna start again.
Because I had the thing where you walk into the first cave area and there's basically just icons all over the floor, and you're like, oh, where do I start? What do I do? Who should I be? And there's all those weapons, which to get at what you were saying before, like having to re-roll the character, I kind of look at that and I'm like, oh man, that's crazy. But then I realized I've done that in Bloodborne a bunch of times. Yeah. Like you have a different starting weapon each time. The difference is in that one, you can basically pick up different weapons throughout the game. So did you feel like you were married to one specific weapon through this game?
Yeah, kind of. And maybe it's just because I was scared to jump out of my comfort zone because I got so comfortable with the Switchglaive. And I think one of the important things to emphasize is that every single weapon in this game has its own like gigantic skill tree. And if you pick up a new weapon, then you basically start over at square one, and you have to you gain more skill points the more you use a weapon. And eventually you have to use a weapon for a very long time in order to get that extra skill point once you get deeper and deeper into it. So yeah, I kind of did feel married to the Switchglaive.
It's a great movie.
But yeah.
The thing I really liked about the first game was the sort of the way the environments felt. They felt kind of lived in. They felt almost real. There was like, especially that first area in Nioh, and I played probably about 25 hours of that game. I really liked it. That sort of mixed with the enemies that kind of ramped up in craziness as further you got into the game. Do you get a lot of that in this game? Like, did the enemies get weird and creepy? Did the environments get big and sprawling and interesting?
They definitely get weird and creepy. Yeah, I think it's actually one of my smaller complaints with the game, but I feel like there's a lack of cohesion in the theme sometimes with some of the levels, because you'll be going into a level and it'll be like, okay, good, great. There's a bunch of human enemies. It's going to be like mostly a human enemy level layout.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's like one or two yokai, and then you're back to human enemies, and then you're fighting yokai for 30 minutes. And then there's a couple sprinkled human enemies here and there. It's like, it almost just feels like someone reached into a toy box of enemies and just kind of sprinkled them all over the level.
Right. Yeah, I kind of picked up on that fairly early on in the game, where I was like, it sort of feels scattered. Whereas like other Soulsborne games, it feels a little bit more deliberate in their item placing. It feels a little bit more like they are where you would imagine they'd be in this horrible fantasy nightmare world.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I didn't play any of the first game. So I jumped into this for a minute and just like literally barely spent any time with it. I should have spent more, but I was definitely like, what am I doing here? There's always that kind of feeling of jumping into a sequel without having played any of the previous one, where no matter how much you're paying attention, you still kind of feel like you might maybe miss something. Do you have any suggestions for like somebody who's coming to this completely fresh? You give it a 9 out of 10. Obviously, that's some high praise there. But it's it's a difficult game. Like, do you have any kind of pointers starting out?
Yeah, and I want to sort of reiterate, like, there are so many, especially when it comes, and this is a good thing, like, there's not a criticism at all. There are just so many different move sets to learn, and there are so many layers upon layers of systems. What is your advice for sort of parsing those as a newcomer?
I'm actually working on a video that's like going to be 15 essential tips to surviving Nioh 2. And usually we do 10, but I feel like I have to do 15 just because there's so many in this. There's probably going to be even more than that.
That says a lot.
The biggest thing with this game is that you have to learn the key pull system, which is every time you attack, basically your stamina goes down, but then it starts to refill. And if you're able to hit R1 right before the meter like catches up with the end, then you get that stamina back.
Oh, so it's got that sort of like Gears of War active reload thing.
Yeah, sort of. That's a good like comparison to it. So the longer your combo, the more you have to wait in order for you to get all your stamina back. And you have to learn that because otherwise you're going to be starved on your stamina. And if you run out of stamina in this game, you're basically dead. It's just brutal because not only can you not do anything, but the more you try to do something while you don't have stamina, the longer you'll be stuck in that that state.
Yeah, I noticed that the main character can kind of overexert themselves pretty quickly, and if you try to just mash through it, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it makes it worse.
Yeah, no, it's like trying to go to work on like 2 hours of sleep or something like that. The dominoes keep falling. Did you find that system sort of like distracting as like one extra thing you had to pay attention to on top of all the other stuff that's happening within the combat? Because the combat's like really quick.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is something that you have to pay attention to. I actually really like it because I think one of the things that sets Nioh apart from other Soulsborne or Souls-like games is its pace. A lot of other games are deliberate and kind of methodical because the stamina meter forces them to be. You only have so many hits before you have to kind of back away,
right,
and recover. But with Nioh, if you master the key pull system, you can stay up in an enemy's face pretty much as long as you want. And you can kind of dash back and forth to avoid them, and it leads to a really exciting, fast pace of combat that is very risky, but also very rewarding if you can pull it off.
No, that rules. I noticed early on in the game, there's a lot of what looks like PvP, PvE opportunities. You can summon things that'll just immediately whoop your ass in like the first area of the game. What's up with
the Revenants?
Yeah. What's up with that whole system?
Yeah, it's kind of like Dark Souls's summon system where you can summon people into your game and you can either fight with them or you can cooperate with them. But because Nioh is primarily a single player experience, you are instead summoning the AI ghost, so to speak, of other players. So when another player dies, they drop this sword gravestone, and everything that person had equipped is on that Revenant. So and you can actually get the stuff that they have equipped by killing them.
Oh, that's really cool.
Okay, yeah. So it's like in Bloodborne, the sort of the shadows of people running around. If you actually had to fight those,
yeah.
Okay,
and it's usually completely optional.
Okay, that totally confused me because I definitely was like, who's this new friend and why are they here? And they showed up and just immediately beat my ass. And I was like, well, that seems like an odd thing to put at the very start, but I guess I should learn my lesson.
Yeah. Also, like like kind of like all these other games, it tells you a lot, but also doesn't tell you anything at all at the same time. And so this game wasn't out yet at the time of this, and I was like, are these the developers? Because that's not fair.
I was like, are these characters from the first Nioh who I'm unfamiliar with? I don't know. Anyway. So yeah, like you obviously really liked it. How would you say in terms of difficulty it falls in this general spectrum of Soulsborne experiences? Because
tough.
you are very good at games.
Yeah, you're like.
Well, thank you.
You're one of our A team when it comes to that.
Think about like the common plebe playing this game, just a real town fool.
But also, like, I guess one of the reasons why you were so perfect to review this game is you're not only very good at games, but you also seem to have a very firm grasp of like fighting games specifically and the movesets that are required for you to be good at fighting games. And I like as I was playing through Nioh 2's tutorials, I was like, I've got to like memorize these because this is a notoriously difficult game. Did you sort of find yourself relying on any in particular and not using, or did you kind of like, were there some that you relied on and then you sort of discarded the others, or did you find yourself using most of the moves that were available to you?
There were definitely some moves that I kind of forgot about. Because like you said, there are so many that you get over the course of the game, and a lot of them are very situational. Like there's a couple moves that if you use them just out of nowhere, you're gonna get hit out of it, and it's gonna be useless. But if you're able to like stun an enemy and like make them so that they won't move for just a second, then you can do a lot of damage with some of those moves. And yeah, in terms of the difficulty spectrum, it's hard to say because I feel like Nioh 2 is a very hard game to learn. I'd be very curious to hear your guys' thoughts of like how you guys are jumping into it as people who don't have much experience with the first game, and how that difficulty curve is for you guys. Because Nioh 1 was tough for me to get into, and fortunately I was able to build off of that for Nioh 2.
I played a ton of Nioh 1, and I thought it sort of like ramped up in a fair kind of way. I thought that like that first area specifically was kind of like, okay, well, this is your training wheels and you're figuring this out. You can take down this person. And I did that sort of classic Soulsborne thing where I like slowly inched my way through the first area until I learned the fundamentals. Whereas Nioh 2, I feel like kind of throws you off the deep end really quickly and starts throwing like much harder enemies at you almost immediately in the first area.
That first monkey that you fight is ridiculous.
Yeah, he's
the guy, like,
insane.
Dragging things behind him. Was he that guy?
No, so that guy is tough too, but you can actually just completely run past that guy. You don't have to deal with him.
I don't think you're supposed to fight him at the beginning.
Oh, well, I was fighting him and I was like,
Brendan was too.
damn.
Yeah, no, I think he's like that guy on the first street in Bloodborne with the big hood and the big...
okay, because I was.
Or they put him there to be like, you want to give it a shot?
Right. Okay, that actually makes me feel a little bit better. I was pretty quickly.
No, there's a character right after him that appears.
The first Enki is instantly like the do or die. Like if you cannot get past this, you just put down this game right now.
So as a whole, do you think Nioh 2 is harder than Nioh 1?
Yes, I will say yes, but and this is something that I touch upon in the review. I feel like Team Ninja's strategy with this game was to balance it by giving you something that's really helpful, and then on the other side of it, making something that's really, really hard that you'll have to use the gifts that they gave you in order to deal with.
Right.
So for example, you have this new technique called a burst counter, which allows you to counter enemies that have this red aura move. And almost every enemy has at least one of these moves, and it's ridiculous. They'll just be spamming attacks for like 30 seconds. But if you're able to time your burst counter during that attack, you'll be able to stop them in their tracks, deal a good chunk of damage, and also deal some stamina damage, which allows you to get a rare opportunity to deal damage that you wouldn't normally have. And there's a bunch of other examples of stuff like that in Nioh 2. So I think yes, but at the same time, if you're able to take advantage of some of the things that Team Ninja put in there for you, I think you can probably. Some people might find it a little bit easier.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. So basically, if you memorize and learn the subsystems there, you'll have a better time at mastering this than if you just go in kind of button mash.
That's kind of one of the reasons why I played it, but I just played a little bit. Like I played like 45 minutes an hour, right? But I sort of figured that what I'd do is I'd kind of wait until everyone was playing it, so we could kind of like all learn together, because it's like it is the kind of game where you want to like ask someone what build they're using, and you know you want to hear those tips and tricks and have those conversations because yeah, it's kind of dangerous alone. You know, when you don't know anything, you don't know what you're meant to be doing. If you're like me, you've only played half an hour of the first game.
Sweet. Well, Mitchell, thank you so much for dropping by and joining us. You can go check out Mitchell's review on IGN.com or on YouTube.com/IGN. He gave it a 9. Spoilers.
Yeah. Also, we should do this more often because I miss you.
Yeah, dude.
Seriously.
Mitchell used to be in the San Francisco office. We would work with him and hang out with him and see him every single day. And he moved to LA, and now we only see him on the TVs. But yeah, we miss you, man.
It's good to see your smiling face.
Thank you guys so much. This is my first time on Beyond, and I've
what?
We have to have
it's
you
been
back.
a blast.
We got to fix that. We'll get you on more often.
See you, Mitchell.
Yeah.
You can follow Mitchell on Twitter.
guys.
He's Jurassic Rabbit. Check out his articles if you're having trouble with finding things to do in Nioh. Then go check that out. You can find the rest of us on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. Lucy is Lucy O'Brien.
I am Luce O'Brien. Actually. Luce.
E. Letter E.
Letter E.
That's it.
O'Brien.
Sounds, again, phonetically, we'll put it in the links or something.
You guys, we have a guest. You're arguing in
Sorry.
front of him. He's on
Bye,
the TV.
Mitchell.
Mommy, Daddy, please don't fight.
Bye, Mitchell. I was just gonna wrap things up, but
Okay. No,
Okay.
let's get out of here.
okay. That's it. Don't follow Brian. You
What?
should actually block and report Brian.
Don't leave me out of this crap.
Yeah.
You should follow. You
said-
should follow me
he said-
and tell your friends
He said
to follow
crap
me.
on the show.
Lucy said the S word at the beginning.
You should
Yeah,
do.
and I saw your look that you gave me. You're like, you said the S word. And I was like, yeah.
I thought it
you
was
did.
cool.
Anyway, thank you all for watching. We love you dearly. Hopefully things will be back to normal at some point, but if they're not, well, we're all in this together.
Yay! Beyond.
Beyond.
We did it.
Beyond.
Ugh.